Okay, hello. Thank you for joining us this afternoon in Ghana, and I'm sure this evening in East Africa. That's where patience is coming from, and I think it's early morning thereabouts at where Erica is coming from. And I would like to thank you all guys for joining. Today, Erica is going to talk about concept of program management. I have some of my DSC core team members here with me. I have Jessica. Um, I have Shei here, Christiana. Then I have my DSC team member. I have Eko also here, and I have my DSC colleagues. Patience is here. Elvis is here. I can see Jane. Jane, you're welcome. Jane is also here. And I have one of the members also here, the DSC member, Samuel George is also in here. So I think we will have a wonderful session, and the session is being recorded. So I would like to let you all know. And after everything, I would like to stream it on YouTube live for others to also join. So, guys, let me welcome Erica. Erica is already in our midst. So, Erica is actually our global DSC lead, and she had other small positions, which currently she is our lead. She's our global lead for at Google, and she has a whole lot of plan for us. Erica is really doing great for us. She's traveling a lot, including last year. She really traveled a lot. I was like, Ish, this woman, like, won't you rest? Because she was moving the first and other stuff. Um, Patients and the other colleagues can tell she was moving everywhere. I was even feeling bad because I couldn't imagine how she was feeling. Yes. So Erica, over to you. You can take the wheel now.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for the introduction and for inviting me. And it's so great to meet everyone here, your awesome core team and other DSE leads and members. So thanks so much for joining. I'm going to be talking to you about program management. And this has been basically the role I've been in. I've been program managing for 9 years now out of the 13 and a half years I've been at Google. So I am happy to share more about this. So I'm going to present my screen. And so go through some slides, and then I'll take any questions as well. And okay, so here, I think you can all see that now. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you about program management, as I mentioned, but first I'm going to introduce myself and talk a little bit about my career journey and how I got to become a program manager. So first, as I mentioned, I'm Erica Hanson, and I lead the Developer Student Clubs program at globally. Right now, I'm based in New York. But to go back 13 years, at university, I went to Stanford in California. I studied psychology. That was my major, and my minor was communications. So I wasn't really sure exactly what I was going to do, but I knew that I loved those topics. I was interested in technology. My father was interested in tech and did some coding for fun on the side. And he was a webmaster. He was a volunteer webmaster. So I learned about tech, I would say, first from him. And I decided to take a computer science class at university. It was a kind of an intro class. It was learn JavaScript and HTML, and I built a very simple website. But that was really cool, and I enjoyed learning that process and building something. Having a project is something that I built at the end of it. So I learned a bit more about technology, and I went to a job fair, a physical job fair, where I handed in my resume to Google. They had a booth at the job fair, and so the job that was available was it was essentially customer service. It was an entry-level job. This was 13 and a half years ago, and it was essentially customer service, helping people who had questions about their advertising campaigns on Google. You know, those ads that you see. basically any businesses that were advertising, just answering questions they have. So I was answering phones, answering emails. And so that was the first thing I did. And so through that, I was able to learn more about the company, other teams that were out there. And so the next role was essentially working with small to medium sized businesses on their marketing strategies and supporting them. So I did that for about 4 years. And in that time, I did, 20% projects, just learning more about what are the other teams that are out there, what are other people doing at the company, what are other roles that are outside of what I was doing. So I was just really curious and interested in learning from people and trying out different projects. And so eventually I found a role in London. So this is the London office up here. And it was a project manager, basically project management. And I had been doing some project management before. I basically had volunteered and said, hey, I can support, and I ended up setting up a training program for people, and I managed that project start to finish. And so I had some of the skills, but really through this role in London, I was able to just learn as I went, and it was basically it was operations kind of a role, helping teams be more efficient and more effective. But what I wanted to talk even more about was the next role, which was in Singapore. This is when I ended up joining the developer relations team, which is the team I'm on now. And so with this team, our goal is really to help developers be more successful. And basically we're program managers. And the way that I got this role was actually I did a 3-month rotation before I got the role, where it was called Women on the Web, and I was working on how do we support women and with trainings and the resources they need to start businesses online. So I managed that program for a few months and was able to get experience and utilize my strengths to do well at that. And I really focus on my strengths there, which are collaboration and storytelling. And so I was able to do well with that role. And then that led me to find and hear about and apply for the developer relations role in Singapore. And so I managed different projects there where we helped it was like training programs to help people learn how to build Android apps, for example. So I'm going to share some examples of the specific projects I worked on and how to think about a project in a moment. But wanted to mention that that's also where I started to work with communities. So as all of you you're part of a community, whether that's online or offline, I think communities are really important. And this was one of the first community events I went to over here. And what I love about communities is, people can come together, you'll learn from each other, you can share ideas, find other people to work on projects with you, and it can give you the opportunity to volunteer, be part of a core team, and basically just work on your leadership skills. You can be a speaker, you can volunteer. So it's so great that, all the different roles are very important in building a community and being part of a community. And it's a great place to learn from each other. And that's why I set up a community for women in tech in Singapore. It was called Geek Girl Meetup Singapore. For 3 years, I worked on this with some friends, where we basically had, we were helping women who were running startups or interested in building startups. And then I moved to New York 2 years ago, and that's where I started leading the Developer Student Clubs program. So as you all probably know, these are university-based communities where students can come and learn about Google technologies and work on projects together. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. And so that's been my journey. And one thing I just wanted to call out is that I did have a non-tech background. My major was psychology. I minored in communications. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do, whether I was going to get into psychology or I really wasn't sure. And so I just basically asked around and learned what was out there and just handed in my resume and was able to kind of learn and carve a career path um, throughout the last 13 and a half years. Because it's hard to know exactly what you want to do, but um, I was able to learn throughout, and so it's been a cool journey. So now I'm going to share a bit more about what is a program manager. And so um, I'm going to play a video right now, and you'll hear from some other people at Google what they say a program manager is all about.
My name is Eve Anderson. I'm a technical program manager.
My name is Omi Yamu.
My name is Sam Cowley. I am a TPM, a technical program manager.
A TPM figures out how to build a product.
My name is Zuri Kemp. I'm a program manager. I like to summarize my role as I organize, I anticipate, and I mitigate.
What I really do is work with so many people towards one concrete goal.
I am definitely mostly talking with people, yes. I'm a big talker.
On a day-to-day basis, it means that I work with software engineering teams, also with educational teams to create content to educate Google's engineers.
Being a TPM, you're always trying to bring teams together. It gets a little bit tricky at Google because people have their own ideas and own opinions.
You need to be eloquent. You need to be nice. Secret weapon.
The type of people who become TPMs are the type that say, okay, tell me more. Let's figure this out.
Almost everything we do is a collaboration. And I feel like that makes stronger products, and it helps us put ourselves in the shoes of our users.
Great. So that's so wanted to give you a sense of what program managers at Google do and what's also important to keep in mind. So I'll share my perspective on this. So first of all, so what do I do as a program manager? What do I do in a day? And so I'll share a bit about this. So I lead the Developer Student Clubs program. It is it's a program, and a key thing is really setting up the vision and the strategy. What are the goals? And so that's what this picture over here represents, is just really at the start understanding, why are we doing this? What are the goals and the vision? And then it's important to come up with a plan. Once you've set these goals and vision and thought about the team, who should I have on my team? You need to think of the plan and the timelines. And in terms of the team, this is a critical part of the whole process. And I'll dig a bit deeper into this. It's hard to just I can't do this alone. Everything is about teamwork and having people with different backgrounds and skills. Everyone has different strengths. And so it's really about finding the people who are really good at certain things and capitalizing on those strengths so that you can have a really strong and diverse team. And this is a picture of my teammates around the world who also work on developer student clubs. And so it's important to have a really strong and great team that is clear on the vision, what you're doing and why, and the goals. And so everyone can kind of work together towards, okay, let's work towards these same goals together. And then having a project plan. So this is just a template I put together just for this presentation. So just as a quick example, but it's really like just having a tracker of, okay, here's what we need to do and who's going to do what, and assigning out, that the tasks and the milestones, and that's part of it. So as a program manager, these are some of the steps. It's day to day, it's a number of meeting with people, checking in on how things are going, and planning with people, checking in on our goals, how are we doing, and so there's a lot of that as well. But that's overall what I'm doing as a program manager. And one thing I'm going to talk through the different steps, key things to think about at each stage. But first, wanted to clarify, because I've also had this question before as well. What is the difference between a program or a program manager versus a project or project manager. So you can also look this up online, but how I think of it is that, a program is usually, and as a program manager, it's usually broader, and you're thinking about kind of the long-term outcomes. And it's, usually a longer duration. And within the program, there's a number of standalone projects. And so I see it as, within my role as kind of the umbrella, managing this broader program. And when I think of projects and the project managers, it's within this, it's a standalone, with a start and end, and it's focused on the deliverables and the outputs, and so that's usually how I think of it. So I'm managing this program, but within it, I'm working on a number of projects, and still working towards that broader vision. So that's usually how I think about it. And feel free to look it up online as well, and dig a bit deeper into the nuances of it. So I want to talk now about the steps that I follow. So these are the steps that I follow, and you can also, there's other processes and ways of kind of packaging this out there. But this is, for me personally, the way that I like to think of it. And so there's this works for me, and all of that to say there might be other types out there, or better things that might work for you, but this is how I categorize it, and it helps me kind of think through it. So I think about it in terms of starting, kicking it off, planning, executing, and closing. But before I get into any of this, I always like to start with why. So if you're managing a project and building a team, it's always important to ask why. Why do we want to work on this project? What is the why behind it? And that will help you think about, then think about the what and the goals, and start to work around that. But it's important to have the why, and setting that vision and the idea of what you're wanting to achieve early. And so with the start, it's really about, kicking it off and just kind of scoping it out. Why are we doing this? And then the planning is getting in a bit deeper into the details, and planning out the tasks and the timeline. Executing is actually doing it, executing on your plan and checking in to make sure things are going well. And then closing, it's about ending the project, saying thank you to your team, and reflecting what went well and what didn't. So that's the overall process. And so I'll share a bit about how I think about this. So when I start a project or a program, it's really about the what. What do we want to achieve, and why? So those are the first things I think about. And I like to, for me, whiteboard, just draw things out. I really like to diagram and draw like circles and shapes and rectangles, and kind of map out and kind of categorize. And so I think for me personally, it helps to draw it out and kind of brainstorm that way. And I also like to do this with friends and other people. And if you already have a team in place, or a partner, a co-lead, or someone that you're working with, I like to do it with them as well. And we kind of work on stuff together, like, hey, what is our why, and what should this vision be, and what are we trying to achieve? And I personally like to do this with other people, or you can also do it yourself. From there, it's really just mapping it out. What is the project description, kind of the summary of this, scoping it out, and what are we trying to achieve here? What are the goals and objectives? And roles and responsibilities are really important. It's if we have this project in front of us, like, what kind of roles do we need, and what is the responsibility of each person? And that's super important when you're building a project, to think about, okay, what types of roles do I think that I need? And then you can put a call out for that. Or maybe you have the people already, and then it's just about, okay, let's be really clear on like, what is your role? What are you leading? And this is what you do. This is what you do. And just kind of bucketing it will really help so that there's no confusion. And so people know, you know, what is their scope of work. And within this too, for me at least, it's thinking about the stakeholders. Are there certain people that I need to make sure that I keep informed, and who's important for that? So this is the start phase for me. And then I get into the planning. And so it's about identifying the tasks. What do we need to do to get things done? What are the milestones or the kind of key, basically those key milestones that we need to work towards and make sure that we're making progress. I work on the timeline and how are we going to track this? Do we have like a dashboard where we're keeping track of metrics and numbers? I also, within the team, I dig a bit deeper into the team structure and who is on this team. And I determine with my team, you know, first of all, their roles and responsibilities, but then like how often should we meet? Should we meet weekly for half an hour and what should the structure of that meeting be? Should it be just kind of around the room updates, or should we kind of focus on one topic and brainstorm together? And maybe that's where you meet and check on your goals. How are we progressing? So you can determine that early with your team. And then it's a matter of setting up a communications plan. So for me, for one of the projects I'm managing, I have a weekly email I send to about 60 people every week, where I'm like, here's how we're doing, here's some insights, here's things that we need to kind of keep an eye on. And so that's my communications plan. I send out an email once a week, and once a month we have a meeting where we all get together and as a big group and just kind of share best practices and ideas. So that's for me for a specific project I'm thinking of. But for you can think about what is that communications plan. Also, at this point, documenting any potential risks. It's important through the planning to think about, are there risks, things that we really need to keep an eye on? Let's just document them now and start making sure that we have plans in case these risks become real problems. Then it's the execution. So you're executing, making things happen, going into your tracker and just making sure that you're tracking the progress and that you're detail oriented and that you're just checking in regularly. Is this done? What stage are we at? And making sure that you're sticking to your deadlines. So it helps to have deadlines and then check back, like, did we achieve that yet? Or is there a blocker, something that we need to remove to make sure that this happens? Also within execution is managing the team. So for me on various projects, this is important to just kind of check in with the team and see how they're feeling. Does anyone need more support? Are they clear on their goals and what they're working towards? I'm thinking of a different project now where we had a team of, I think there was 8 of us, and we basically met once a week, and each person had different roles, basically. So one person was managing like the data piece, someone else was doing more of the marketing, someone else was taking care of like speakers. Like this was for an event series, and so we needed someone to focus on finding speakers. And so each person had like their own focus area. And so every week we would basically, each person would just share, here's for marketing, here's how we're doing. These are some of the things that we've achieved, and I want to discuss this. I'm having some problems with this or that. So it helped with managing the team that early on. I think what helps is of carving out and making clear like what that person's role is. Like, okay, you're the marketing person, and working with them on like, what is the one thing that is there a deliverable, or is there one goal that they're really working towards? And working on that together and just really being clear on that and having a way of checking in with them to see how things are going. And making it fun as well, like with the team. A couple things that I've done before are giving regular kudos, like, oh, thanks, maybe once a month. It's like, oh, kudos to this person because they went above and beyond and did this one thing and it was really great. So just making sure that you're regularly thanking them and checking in, and seeing how you can support them. But also at the same time, making sure that you're working together towards one clear vision or goal. There's something that you're all aligned on and working towards. And then in terms of the execution, it's really executing on those communications. Whoever you need to be communicating with. So for me, I just need to alert my team once a week, like I said, with that email. And so people just know that's where they go. They're not going to get lots of different emails or me calling them all the time. It's like, that's where they go for those communications and being clear. You can expect maybe to hear from me once a week, and so they know what to expect. And that could either be maybe it's a meeting where you share the comms, or if it's an email or WhatsApp, you can decide what is the communication plan. And the close, the last step is you complete the project. It's done. So what's important in the closing? Gathering feedback. So for me, with some of the programs I've run, it's sending out a survey to people. Like you can create a form and just asking, how did this go? What went well, what to improve. So getting direct feedback can really help. And then there is that reflection time, kind of like a post-mortem sort of a thing. And you can get in a room with your teammates and just kind of whiteboard, like, okay, what went well? And you can just write that out. What can be improved? You could write that out. One thing I've done that I liked is using Post-its. So in silence, each person can write out on a Post-it one thought per Post-it. And so you can put like a what went well, what to improve, 2 different columns, and each person can write out what that is. Like maybe what to improve, we didn't have clear goals, and the person writes it down and then pastes it up under that column. So you can have people just write it out so that they have that time to kind of think about it, and then they can put the Post-its up, and then you can review together and see the full list of what went well, what to be improved, and then you can discuss as a group. Do we all agree with this? What should be the next steps and actions? How can we improve this for the next year? So the reflection is really important. Another thing too is stories. Are there any stories to share? Are there people who've been impacted? And yeah, are there cool stories that can share and maybe inspire other people, or stories that show the impact? And I'll share an example in a moment of a story like that. And then sharing a project report out. Basically, I usually, after we finish something, it's, okay, here's what happened, here's the numbers, here's the information, here's what worked and what didn't. And you kind of share that report out just to close it. And then making sure that you thank the team, thanking people for their contributions, thanking them for being a part of the team. And that's super important, is thanking everybody. So those are the steps: start, plan, execute, and close, and making sure that you're clear on the why. And now I'm going to give a specific example. So this is, the example I'm going to share is one program I worked on in Indonesia. It was called Indonesia Android Kejar, and it basically people learned how to build Android apps, or they also learned how to make their apps even better as well. So it was different levels, but it was combining online learning. So people learned online through Udacity. They took courses online, and it was paired with in-person facilitator-led workshops and study groups. And then they worked on projects. After they learned, they put their skills to use and built a project at the end. It was for beginner, intermediate, and advanced. People could choose what level they were at. So that was the program I worked on for 2 to 3 years there. And so now I'm going to go through each of the steps and just things I was thinking about. And so I was thinking about the what and the why, and a key goal was really to upskill and support our goal overall as a team is really to help people grow as developers and be successful. And so I wanted to support people in upskilling them, helping them build their first apps and be even better developers. And so the how was through training. And so I started to map out a plan and a project plan and scoped out the work and basically put a pitch together. Also, if you need budget for a project, I planned out, what is this budget we need, and shared it with my manager and got approval and was able to then get to the next stage. But in that start phase, I was just kind of thinking about, here's what I want to achieve, and starting to work out some of the project scope. Also decided, okay, who are the other people to get involved? We had an amazing partner, Keybar, who helped us run this. And so that was a key part of this starting off phase and kicking it off. Then it was the planning stage of, okay, what are the different tasks and what are the milestones? When do we kick off these, the Indonesia Android Kejar program, setting the timeline? What are some milestones? And what are the different things that we need to do to achieve this? We need to find the facilitators. Who's going to be facilitating these workshops? We first had to identify a process for how do we find those people. And then how do we get the word out there that this program is available so people could sign up. So there's a lot of different steps that we had to put together. And then I worked out the communications plan as well. And so this, as I mentioned, is a template, but these are some of the things I had to set up a project tracker. And this is something you can do for any of your projects. And there's different templates out there. But for me, it helps to kind of prioritize, how important is this? And for me, it was like setting the vision and the plan and the goals, and determining your team, who's on the team, and setting up the plans. So for me, it helps to have, comments and links, who's the point of contact that owns this, who are stakeholders you have to share things back to, when things are due, and the status are key things that are important to kind of keep checking back on, no matter what size your project is. I think it really helps to keep track of these things. And then it was the execution and making sure that we have a place where we're tracking these metrics of, one thing we were looking at is number trained. So checking, having a dashboard where we check that, getting feedback from people as well. Is this working? Are there things that we can improve? Even if the project hasn't finished yet, you can get feedback along the way from your team, directly from the people that are participants in the project. And so one of the things that I did with this, with Indonesia Android Kejar, was I ended up learning Android through Udacity. So I also took the course online, and it was beginner, learning Java. And so I was able to build a simple app. And so I had part of the learning journey that people had. And then I was a facilitator. And so I did that for a weekend, teaching a group of 8 women. And so that was a really cool way that I don't think this wasn't a mandatory thing, but for me, this was one way that I wanted to get feedback, is being a participant in a way, being a facilitator, to understand how are things working logistics wise, or even how is this experience of learning online and then meeting in person to discuss and share with the group. So that was one way that I was able to really get feedback and immerse myself in the process. And also testing new ideas throughout. And so one thing we ended up doing is we wanted to support women in finishing the program. And so we started setting up women's study groups where women could opt in to learn with other women. And we got a lot of interest in that. And so we decided to continue to have that be an official part of the program, so women could opt into studying with other women. Testing new ideas during the execution phase was we did a job fair. So after people learn through the program, then there was a hackathon, and in addition to the hackathon, there was also a job fair happening at the same time. So people could learn about other roles out there and get some information. And so that was a new idea we were able to test. And then we closed the project and gathered feedback, reflected, and looked through to see if there's any stories of impact that we could share back with other people and say, and inspire other people. So I'm going to now show you an example of a way that we recapped and shared a story. And so meet Janice. She was a student. So she was part of the program. She was part of a beginner study group. And eventually, she learned, and then she did the intermediate course. And so she joined this journey as a student. And eventually she became an Android developer as part of her career. So she actually handed her resume in at the job fair to this startup and was able to get her first job as an Android developer. And after that, she became a teacher. So she had learned and she wanted to give back. So she started to, basically she was a facilitator, and she wanted to support other women in their journey as they go from student to whatever next step they go to. Then she became a mentor to me as I was learning online. I was new to building Android apps and being an Android developer. So she supported me as I was taking the course online. And then she supported me as a co-facilitator when I taught this group of 8 women. Eventually, she was there as a co-facilitator. So we did it together. Then she became a speaker. She started to speak at Google developer groups, GDG events, and continues to speak. And so this is Janice. It's an example of sharing the journey of someone who went through this program and what they were able to achieve and do. And so this is something else that I think is important to, managing the project, is thinking about, are there any stories and ways that we can show how this impacted and helped people? And so for me, stories are very important. And so this is just the high level of how I think of, managing a project from start to finish. You start, you kick it off, and you plan out the details, then you actually execute, make it happen, and then you close. You want to celebrate, get feedback, think of what to improve, and share any stories. And so now I'll just share some tips. Be clear on the why and your goals. So some of you may be wanting to set up a team, or you might be leading a team, or you might be a team member. And so it's important at the beginning to really think about, what is the why? Why are we doing this? And what are our goals? And also thinking about and setting the vision, and just being clear together on what are you trying to achieve, and what are your goals, and how are you going to get there. And so it's important to set that early on with your team. You can either do it together and just whiteboard, like, hey, let's think of our why and what are our goals, and set those together. Or if you've already kind of worked through that, then finding the team that can help you, that are interested and can get behind that and work with you to help you and as a team achieve that together. So there's a couple ways to do that. For me, one program I managed, ahead of time, I thought about generally, what the goals. I had kind of worked out the vision, but I still wanted to kind of tweak it. I knew I had an idea of the different types of roles that I needed support with. Like, so I needed a data person, a marketing person, someone to work on the content. I wanted someone to think about diversity and inclusion. And so I put a call out. I said, hey, does anyone want to support with this? Here's, some of the things we're thinking about. And then people said, yes, I want to help. I want to help. And so then as a team, then we could kind of clarify things together. We ended up tweaking the vision. It's like, okay, this is what I was thinking. How do you feel? And then we just worked together and brainstorm, and we're able to kind of tweak it and make it even more clear and better. And then we were able to really solidify what is each person doing and what is going to be their main deliverable. And so I wanted to make sure it felt like a team and that we were working on it together, keeping people motivated and working towards a goal, and also making sure to thank them along the way. And so as a key tip is really that collaboration is teamwork is so key. And it helps, everyone has different ideas, and it helps to have that space of like, where can we share best practices with each other? And making sure that everybody does have, clear goals and things that they're working towards. But at the end of the day, it's about collaboration. And so this team here is the developer student club leads, the community managers and regional leads around the world. And so the way that we collaborate is, each person is kind of working with developer student clubs in their own regions, but we get together, we have a space where we meet once a month and we share best practices. Oh, here's what some people are, different things students are doing, and this is really cool. And so another region might say, hey, this is something, maybe we can bring this to our region. That sounds really cool. So it's just a space to kind of share best practices and collaborate. But teamwork is so important, and saying thank you along the way. When I've worked on projects, it's important to say thank you at the end and really make sure that you're appreciating the people that are all part of this, because it really takes a team. And feedback is a gift. So I get feedback through surveys sometimes, where I directly ask people, or I randomly ask people part of the programs. And so sometimes it can be pretty critical feedback, and it's kind of hard to take it, or some are like, oh, it's great. But no matter what it is, it's important to know that feedback is a gift, no matter what, and just listen to it and see what you can take from it. But I think it just helps us make things even better. So thank you. I'll share a couple other points in a moment, but wanted to say thanks for listening, and you can also follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. And thanks so much for listening. I'll share a couple other key things as well. Let me just stop sharing, and I'll share a couple things. So one other thing I wanted to mention is a question I received was just about managing global program. And, there's lots of different teams and people I have to talk to. And so how do I really balance, everything and make things happen? Because sometimes it can just seem so busy, and to keep on top of everything with our trackers. So one thing for me that really helps is just prioritization and checking in regularly on what are the priorities. Is this really the most important thing right now? Are there, and if it is, then we might need to deprioritize something else. And so that prioritization process might need to happen, because certain people get busy, or maybe they don't have time to support as much anymore. So you need to kind of readjust from there. So prioritization is one. Another thing is having a team and really potential and delegating as well, and splitting up roles. So in the past with this one project I was mentioning, there's no way that I could do everything myself. And I'm also not an expert in everything. Like I'm not an expert in data. And so it really helped me I was the one overseeing it, checking in on the project plan and leading the meetings every week. But I had a teammate who was an expert in data, and they're very technical. And so that person every meeting was giving the update on data. And so I was asking questions and supporting if they needed help. But I didn't need to be an expert in that, and they were. So that helped so that I could not get too overwhelmed and not have to do it all myself. I also had someone who was a marketing expert. So they're good about the branding and the event planning and management. And so they focused their time on that, and every week in the meeting they could share those updates. And so I also didn't need to be an expert in that, but I did need to be organized, needed to have good communication skills, and make sure that the team felt good and felt happy, like, okay, we're making progress, we're working on this together. and we're working towards a goal. And so that was my role, is just kind of making sure we're all on track. And so I didn't need to do all those little things. And so maybe if you're leading a project, maybe you're building a project, solving a problem, it's when you're building that team, it's just really important to define the different roles, like who's doing what. Do we have a clear why are we doing this? Do we have clear goals? And let's stay organized. Let's build a project tracker together and check in. And that's something you can look at in every meeting. Okay, have we done this? Have we done this? And so you can keep track along the way. So that's, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Trying to think if there's anything else. And just one thing is, it is important to trust your team. And if you've kind of outlined your roles, like, okay, you're going to be owning marketing, let them really lead it. But it is important to check in. And once you've kind of set those milestones, checking in on how things are going, letting them be the ones to lead that and share updates. But having that trust and building that really strong team environment is important, and thanking them as well. So that's everything about program management and from me, and it's something I've really enjoyed doing. And I didn't have a plan to do this as my career, but eventually found it and was able to just figure out, okay, what are my strengths and what are the things I need to work on, and just having a strong sense of those things has helped me out and helped me to be a better program manager. So thank you so much for listening, and let me know if you have any questions.
Sure. Thank you, Erica. And guys, do you have any questions for Erica? So she can just answer us. Patience, Echo, are you there?
Yes.
Echo is here. I'm here.
Yeah, sure. So any question for Erica?
I think I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
So, Erica, when you were talking about execution, you made mention of managing the team, and I believe strongly that managing a team will not really be very easy.
You just mute yourself.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah, sure. You can go on.
Yeah. So I was saying that under execution, we're talking about managing a team, and I believe strongly that managing teams, the aim of getting something at the end of the day, won't be very, very difficult. If you could share with us how you've been able to achieve all those projects that you've done.
Yeah, for sure. With a team and how we were able to do all that together. Yeah, I think, and let me know if this doesn't answer your question, but yeah, it can be. It's definitely a lot of. It can be a lot of work to manage a team, and a key thing is also making sure that you have the right people, depending on what you're working on and what you're trying to achieve. Making sure that you find people that are aligned in your values and who, have certain skills that you think are important to the project, but also recognizing that everyone is different, and it is good to have a diversity of opinion and thought and background. But yeah, I think one thing that helps with the team is understanding, what are people passionate about, and what do people enjoy working on? What gets them really excited? And when you talk to them, they have a lot of energy. When they talk about something, they get excited about it. And it's cool to think about giving them those pieces to work on. Like, this person gets really excited about marketing and event planning. So why not let them kind of lead that piece? They really like that. And so that's making sure that you understand their passions, also what they're good at. And it can help too. I sometimes ask, what are some skills they want to work on that maybe they feel like they're not the best at yet, but they want to start working on that. And so I can kind of coach them and help them through that process as well. And it's good to have a regular check-in with the people too, to make sure, you know, how are you feeling about things? Is there anything I can do to support? Do you need more help as well? Do we need to find more people to help you? And so that can really help as well. And then once you find the right people, just making sure it's fun as well. And you know, maybe you all go out for a coffee together, or, you know, maybe even if you have to meet virtually, that's okay. Making like, you can do share fun facts about each other just to get to know each other better as well. That helps. So those are some of the things I've done to build the team so that we can work on things together and achieve our goals.
Yeah, so thank you so much for your presentation. I've learned, you know, the process that you go through when you identify a program or project that you are interested in running. For me, my question would be, have there been any projects that you turned down because you felt that you didn't have the skills to do them, or you challenge yourself to just go ahead and do them and hope to learn new skills in the process?
Yeah, that's a great point. There's things I've turned down because I didn't have the bandwidth and the time. And so sometimes I can sometimes take on too many projects sometimes, and I'm like, oh, I can just do all these things, and then I'm not able to put enough time. So I think one thing I've learned is that it's important to think about how much time do I actually have. And so I have said no to projects, even though I was really excited about them. And I'm trying to think, there have been some that, there was one in particular, I wasn't that excited about it. And I wasn't sure if I had the best skill set. I thought there might be people better than me, but I was asked to do it. And so I didn't have a ton of choice, actually. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna really dig into it and make this fun. I'm gonna learn, you know, more about what this is. And even if I'm not the best at it, I can try to find people who can support me. And if I need help or I wanna ask people questions, I'll just ask questions and just kind of have to learn along the way. And so it can help to have like a friend tour, a mentor who's a friend, and you could kind of be that for each other, a friend tour. But I've had a couple of those people when I've been stuck, or I'm like, I'm not an expert in this, can you help me, or what do you think? And so I've had those people I can bounce ideas off of if I wasn't totally comfortable with a project I had taken on. And so I also have a mentor at work as well, who I meet with usually once a month, and I ask them, and they're a lot more senior than I am. And so I ask them questions and share challenges. And together we work through some of the challenges and we problem solve together. And so that's helped me work on projects when I wasn't as comfortable with them.
Hi, Erica.
Hi.
Thanks for the great presentation. Well, my question had to do, it looks like you stumbled into technology, like you just stumbled into it because you weren't prepared for it. How has it been, how have you been able to adjust, you know, from a background which is not centered or rooted in tech to now spearheading tech in an interesting way? How have you been able to adjust? How's it been like for you?
Yeah, it definitely, I've learned along the way, and some of it was self-learning. So I had to kind of learn on the job, and actually you learn a lot by just doing and kind of throwing yourself into something. For me, that's how I like kind of learned on the go. And I also put in some extra time later into self-studying. So I did this online Udacity course, so I learned a bit of that. I've taken some kind of online free courses before. So one was the Udacity, and sometimes I take some of the trainings that they have at Google. Like I did a project management training 101, but I've seen some of those similar resources online. So one thing is just, I did some self-studying, so I put some of the work in. But so that was one thing, and there's so many resources out there and a lot of good free ones. But another thing that I did was I tested. I do a lot of testing and piloting. So one thing is, and also networking, I'll mention too. So I was able to do some like 20% projects, and that's something they have at Google where you could, work on a project just 20% of your time for a period of time. And so the reason I did that was just to learn more about other teams and roles, what they're doing. And so I could kind of learn from people. I could learn by doing, work on projects. And even if I wasn't an expert in that specific field, I was able to build my project management skills. And so it didn't always matter that the industry or kind of bigger picture team was different. It's still the same skills. So being organized and being able to set up a good project plan and being able to collaborate and be a good team player, and being a supportive team player. And so those are some skills that I've been able to bring across, even if as I've worked on tech projects and non-tech. And so making sure that I can understand my strengths and capitalize on those and use them across all the different projects. But it did help for me to have these 20% roles to kind of test it out. And I have had to do some self-study that has helped. And another thing is networking, like learning, meeting other people, joining communities like this, and finding opportunities. That's one way.
All right.
I have another question.
Okay.
If I could ask like one question.
Yeah.
Your first program to run, how did you feel when you were, I don't know if you were approached to work on a project or program, but how did you take the step forward to actually start, Yeah.
Yeah, the first one I worked on was, I'd say one of the first, it was like volunteering for things. Like, so I'm trying to think of, So I'm trying to think of the very first things that I did. There was one that was early on. I don't know if it was the first, but I was really wanting to work with our teams in other countries. And I've always been interested in like training and education. And so I heard of an opportunity. There were some teammates working on like a guru program and a training program to support our teammates in another country. And so I liked that. And so I volunteered. I was proactive and said, hey, I'm interested in training and education. Can I help? Or is there something, can I project manage or can I just give feedback even? And they said, actually, why don't you just take it on and try it? And so at first I said, I'll just be a volunteer. But they said, why don't you we actually need help and you have time. And so I took on a guru program where basically it was where each person is an expert in one area. And so I set up this guru program and it was because I was interested in education. So I was proactive and offered to be a volunteer. And as you go, you find new opportunities and you just kind of put your name in the hat and say, hey, maybe I can try this and volunteer. And sometimes opportunities just open up.
Oh, okay. All right. So, Echo, can you help us read the few questions we have for Erica there? Then we can work on
All right. Okay, I will. So this is a question from Francis Eshon. He says, Erica, during my time as a lead, I realized that some people, though they are good at what they do, decide not to give up their best, especially when it doesn't benefit them money-wise. Any advice on how to make them excited about it? What would you do to convince a member of your team to give up their best and not necessarily expect something in return?
Yeah, that can be tough sometimes as the motivation of people. And even if I've had this before, that's a tough one. It's like sometimes people are, they're good, but then maybe their intentions aren't what you're hoping for or what might not be best for the project. So, when it doesn't benefit money-wise. And so that's how it can help to I'm trying to think of other things that I've done. So outside of work, when I've led, for example, I led a community for women in tech. And so it was important to have a team of people, we were all volunteers. And so our goal, it was helpful to think like, okay, why are we doing this? What are some of our goals? And it's like, so we decided it's for the benefit. We want to help other people. We want to help people be successful. We've had the opportunity to learn things. We want to share that with other people. We want to connect people to experts so they can learn, they can be better, and they can achieve their goals. And so we realized that our passion and interest was helping people. And so it helped that we found other people who had that passion and interest of kind of giving back, of that idea of like community, giving back, sharing knowledge, learning, but then paying it forward and sharing that with someone else, or someone needs help helping them. So we found a team of volunteers who helped us, and also people to lead, and we were all volunteers. And so it does help to find those people who are motivated by the same things and have that same mission of we want to help people. And so it can be the case sometimes people are expecting something back, but you might have to just set the expectation at the beginning, like here's what our purpose is and our mission. We want to help people grow. And also you can explain the value to them. It's like, what is the value? It's like you can build your leadership skills. Think about skills that you can build together. And these are things you can also put on your resume. You can talk about this in job interviews as well. So it does benefit you too. And so maybe you can explain some of those values and things that they can build on. And so that can sometimes help.
All right. So the next question is from Joshua Sankwa. I hope I got your name right. It reads, is it always necessary to drop team members who want personal benefit over the team's goals in order to achieve your milestone on time?
That can be tough. That's a tough one. Because it's like you're part of a team, you built up this team, but if it is good to check back and meet one-on-one with the person instead of in a group situation. You don't want them to feel uncomfortable. You don't want to throw anyone under the bus, or it's good to just one-on-one and talk to them and ask questions. Like, so I've asked questions before. It's like, okay, so how are you feeling about how this project is going? Are there any concerns, and you can just get to know, just talk through this with someone. And at some point, if you realize that you're just not aligned and they're not motivated by this, and you're not aligned, and maybe this might not be an interest, this might not be the best fit for them, then it could be the case that you might have to, and it could be a mutual discussion. Like, how do you feel? Are you getting, if this isn't a fit for you, then maybe you can work on another project. Maybe you can find another opportunity that might fit your interests and passions and skills of where you're at right now. Because maybe there's a reason why maybe they're at a different point right now where they really want to get something out of it for some reason, and maybe this is just not the best fit. So sometimes you do have to kind of have that discussion and let that person go. But it's a discussion, and it's good to ask questions.
Right. Thank you. That's about all the questions I have here.
Okay, all right.
Just, I have one question.
Okay.
Sorry, budding with some questions. Erica, what would you say are the biggest challenges you have faced with your programs? Or you could talk about a recent program that you're on. What, apart from COVID, okay, before COVID, but what challenges have you faced? How did you overcome them?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of the biggest challenges right now. There's been some where it's like, I'm trying to think of the biggest ones. Yeah, there's always challenges. Actually, there's quite a few. It's with every project, there's something that comes up. Sometimes it can be in the team. And people aren't, sometimes we're not hitting our goals, or we're kind of missing deadlines. That's happened before. And so it's good to kind of think about, that's why it's important to kind of check the tracker and understand, okay, how are we doing, and where are we at, and so you can kind of discuss that together. So there's been problems where we've missed deadlines, and then it's a matter of, okay, why did we miss it? Is it okay that we missed it? Maybe we need to be communicating more. And so missing deadlines has been one, and then just getting to the bottom of why. Sometimes it's been timing and bandwidth. Like we have like a short timeline, and so it's like, how do we get this done? We actually don't have enough time, and just problem solving. How do we do this? And is it still achievable? And in some cases, if it's like, I know we're not gonna, the deadline is too short, then I need to, one thing is talk to my manager and say, this is unrealistic now, here's why. And at some point, sometimes you just have to accept as well that, okay, we just couldn't, it's just too tight of a timeline, and this is how we have to deal with it. So yeah, those are certain things that have come up. I do have to get going pretty soon, unfortunately, so I might just be able to answer one more question.
All right. So there's one last question from Elvis. He says, have you ever had any failure in any project or program? How do you handle failures if it happens?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think, I don't know if anything has failed. I feel like everything is, we've tried things, I've piloted things that we don't always continue after the pilot for various reasons. Maybe we weren't able to get budget. Maybe we weren't able to get enough support or people interested. And sometimes I see failure as an opportunity as well, because sometimes when you fail at something, or it maybe not fail, but it just didn't work out the way you wanted to. We didn't have enough like number of people that came to an event, for example, as we were hoping. And so then it's like that debrief after is so important. What can we learn from this? And actually sometimes the moments when things didn't work out the way I wanted to, like there's an event in my mind I'm thinking of that we wanted a certain number of people to come, and it was like a lot lower than that. And I was pretty disappointed, but actually I was able to learn from that. And sometimes I remember my failures and was able to kind of fix something after, more than the things that I did really well. Whether that's good or bad, but I was able to like learn a lot from it and prevent it from happening in the same way in the future. And so I thought, okay, now I know that I just have to invite a lot more people than what I'm expecting, because people get busy. And so then I was able to make tweaks that made it better in the future. So I think failures can definitely be some of the best learning experiences, because if we're successful all the time and just continuing achieving them, sometimes we don't always learn as much and don't always remember those moments. So I do see failures as really good opportunities to learn.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much, Erica, and thank you very much all for joining. We've heard from Erica, and she's more experienced. She has, Erica, how many years have you been with Google?
13 and a half.
Wow. That's
a long time.
That's a whole lot. So, in fact, we will be expecting the 20th anniversary actually, because we will be celebrating it live. So celebrating it like virtually. So thank you, Erica, and thank you all for joining. We didn't start early, but we've actually achieved something. I know all of you have achieved something as well. Most who are not from the technical background have also achieved something as well, and those from the technical background has also achieved something. So it's 50-50 altogether. So thank you very much once again, and we would like to bring this to an end here. Then maybe next time, I think we have to do this again, Erica. We'll plan this again with you, maybe with the DSC leads, so you get us something which is pure technical.
Yes. Sounds good. Thank you, and thanks so much for inviting me. It was so great to be here.
Sure.
Good to see you all.
So guys, we all stay safe. We stay at home if you don't have anything doing outside.
Bye.
So, yeah, so bye, Erica. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you too.
Thank you.